the word supply chain probably was said in the last 3 or 4 years more than it ever has been in history. And that strategy around that entire journey is where we probably spend, the bulk of our time with clients. There's no such thing as free. It's costing somebody something.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Click to Buy. Today I'm joined by my guest Carl from Smart Warehousing, and we're going to talk all things Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Well, Carl, we're so excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Happy to be here. Kind of excited to talk about this. This will be an interesting topic for sure.
Absolutely. So, of course, I've checked out your LinkedIn and have followed your newsletter, but for people who aren't familiar, could you maybe give a little intro about who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. Again, my name's Carl Wasinger. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Smart Warehousing. We're based in the Midwest in Kansas City, but we have warehouse and distribution fulfillment centers all over the country. And really, we're a technology company with a network of warehouses, and we help companies fulfill orders and make sure everybody that buys stuff on Black Friday and Cyber Monday all happen to get where it's supposed to go. So we're kind of the back end to a lot of the front end work that happens with a lot of these customers. So we have a ton of employees. So we've been in business for 22 years, and we keep growing every year. And really, the technology that we have is something that really allows us to help customers make sure they have the right stuff in the right place at the right time. So we love
Yeah.
what we do.
That's obviously essential that if people are buying things for Black Friday or even with the upcoming holiday season, like people want to know that they're going to get what they ordered on time, especially for
Absolutely.
last minute shoppers like myself. So to kick things off, I'd actually love your hot take on a hot topic that I've seen kind of popping up in the e-commerce world right now. So I read a study that said that nowadays a lot of customers actually expect that a business is going to have free shipping for Black Friday. Do you think this should be the expectation, or do you think there's some wiggle room for e-commerce brands for their Black Friday, Cyber Monday shipping promotions?
Well, I'm sure there's no such thing as free. It's costing somebody
Of
something,
course,
right?
yeah.
And so they have to figure out a way to either build that into the costs or come up with ways to minimize the cost of offering that kind of service or incentive to get people to buy. But I don't think it's probably going to go away anytime soon. I think it's going to continue to be something that just retailers use and merchants use to incent consumers, right? And so
Mhm.
if there's a perceived cost savings there because of that kind of marketing or that kind of language around something free, then it. I don't know whether it's there's no such thing as free, but it is very effective marketing. So I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to go away anytime soon, I guess, is probably how I think about it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think like what I've heard a lot when people are talking about Black Friday discounts is try to play around with it, but also think like what stays true to your brand. Like maybe you normally have some sort of like free shipping threshold, and now that's why it's like temporarily everything, or so you can still not discount so hard that you kind of hurt your bottom line.
Right.
So
Right.
like you said, free is never free for the business.
Right. They're going to have a certain amount of cost to make sure
Hmm.
that product gets to the right place and gets delivered to the right person, and they just have to figure out how to in the old marketing, squeeze the balloon to figure out where to put that cost,
Hmm.
and then see if they can make it work with all their accounting folks. So
Yeah.
it's a struggle. I think every doesn't matter merchant big or small,
Hmm.
they have to deal with that for sure.
Yeah, and
And
of course, oh, please
I was
go.
going to say about the consumer side, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't think I have 4 kids, and it's, I call it the P problem. They don't have any patience. They don't aren't very good at planning, and if there's a little premium involved, it doesn't seem to bother them. So I think if the consumer's doing that, then you're probably going to have that kind of activity on the other side, on the merchant side.
Absolutely. I think I love the way that you use kind of like a metaphor for this. Thinking about this, so of course, some brands really wait until last minute to get ready for Black Friday. But in an ideal world, and I'm especially interested in your opinion because you understand maybe the logistics that have to go into preparing for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, when should retailers really start to prepare for this rush in this high traffic period?
Well, I think the overall health of that supply chain can't be
Hmm.
about maybe one day or a couple of day
Of course.
events. I
Hmm.
mean, they're probably thinking about volume and spikes and making sure they're positioned to handle that. But I think what really ought to happen for most merchants, and what I see and what we consult with our clients about a lot, is the overall supply chain, the integrity and the health of that overall. So it's not designed to really be about one event, or
Hmm.
one day, or even a short holiday season, even though they might sell a big portion of their goods over that holiday season, or over that same whatever their seasonality is for their businesses. But thinking about the timing and all the things that happen from a logistics perspective to make sure that the success is, we don't run out of something, and everything gets to right where it needs to be, and you don't end up with too much. I mean, it's this constant
Hmm.
balance. And so we work a lot with clients around how to look at that overall supply chain to make sure they're positioned. So a lot of forecasts,
Hmm.
a lot of discussions around velocity and how fast they need to replenish, and what those supply chains look like from the manufacturer to a distribution center, and then from a distribution center into
Hmm.
maybe last mile locations, and then last mile on out. And that strategy around that entire journey is where we probably spend the bulk of our time with clients, just making sure that solution makes sense, and then
Hmm.
layer in on top of that hopefully effective solution to manage the spikes in volumes. So that's really what we spend a lot of time on. So it's a little different for everyone, and those
Yeah.
those every product is different. The time it takes to make it, the time it takes to get it into a packaging, the time it takes to get it into the supply chain, so that whether it becomes a finished good, and when that can start becoming active inventory to start selling through the networks that they might sell through. There is super hard to have a one size fits all, and so what we've learned over the last 20 years is you have to look at it kind of on you can create categories,
Hmm.
but you can't create kind of a one stop or one solution model. It's just super hard to do that for unless you're just selling one thing, and then maybe it's
Yeah,
easy.
true. I think that's really great advice. And I think we see this like in so many different aspects of making a strategy for your e-commerce store, whether it's like the pages that you're creating or the tactics that go there. Like nothing is really like there are best practices that work for a lot, but as you said, like even two businesses that sell something really similar, maybe they have the way that they create their product is different, and then like you said, some of those timelines might not match up. So I think your advice is pretty on point here that you have to really kind of look at the strategy that's going to work for your brand and maybe work your way backwards on all the things that need to be in place for success, not only during like a high volume period, but year round.
Yeah, I wish there was a sort of an easy button for it. And, in the
Yeah.
last few years, I mean, I think the whole world has been introduced to a messed up supply chain.
Hmm.
And it used to be sort of nobody really gave much thought to how stuff ended up, on the shelf or in the front of your house or wherever it ended up so that you could get it.
Hmm.
It just was an assumed, it just works, right? The supply chain just works, and then you throw a pandemic in the mix, and boy, did that change everyone's. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the word supply chain probably was said in the last 3 or 4 years more than it ever has been in history,
Mm,
and so that obviously put a big focus on supply chain and how resilient they are, or how ineffective they are with just a little bit of stress. And banks do stress testing, and all kinds of companies do
yeah,
stress testing, but the supply chain didn't do very much. But
no.
we got a lesson in that for sure the last few years. So.
Absolutely. I'm kind of thinking about these lessons and the strategies. So, thinking about maybe strategies for different aspects of a business, like what are some strategies that business can use to maximize their revenue during Black Friday, considering maybe any angle that you think is important? Could be shipping and fulfillment, could be supply chain.
So there's really probably two things that we're
Hmm.
seeing today. Um, the discussions around the whole concept around Black Friday and Cyber Monday is
Hmm.
super competitive, and I think there's going to be some trends to see how effective some merchants might be at doing um, marketing before those days, or maybe
Mm,
between those days or after those days. So some of the comments we've heard from the market is that it's super hard to compete with the Amazons and the great big retailers out there, right? So if you're a merchant and you're trying to compete with that, there's so much noise from a marketing perspective when people are searching for things that you can't you can't get any oxygen out there. You can't get to the front page, or you can't get where you need to be without just spending a ton of money. And the big retailers tend to be taking up all that space. So I
yeah.
think there's going to be a little bit of a shift towards this, instead of a Black Friday, it might be a whole week of Black Fridays, or somehow to try to
Hmm.
create an opportunity for some visibility, or some marketing, some creative marketing work to get out and reach the consumer and touch those buyers in different ways, other than just competing with everybody on one day. And so
Hmm.
I think those are some things that we're starting to see, and working with our clients on. Okay, let's prepare 2 weeks early. Let's start thinking about what that looks like. And downstream from that, from a success perspective, it takes some of the pressure off of that supply chain. Now there's more capacity, there's more trucking, there's more last mile, there's more
Hmm.
um, line haul, there's more everything in so that you don't have this concentrated, laser into one 24-hour, 136-hour, 148-hour time period. And so I think there's going to be a little bit of a trend to do that. And the other thing that we're seeing a lot, and really kind of what our superpower is at Smart, is helping. It's a positioning battle, right? So if you can deliver, if a customer can find your product and they need it and they want it quickly, if you've positioned that inventory correctly in the right locations, without having to pay expedited or premium costs for shipping, then you can, in essence, compete with this almost same day and next day kind of service, without having to pay for that on the back end, by
Mm,
creating if you have a network that you can get inventory spread out and have it close to where your markets are. There's a real trend right now to push into that kind of, and the market, and the big retailers have, they sort of have a monopoly on that, right? So they've been doing
hmm.
that for years, and they're really really good at it. But an individual merchant that might want to do something on their own really struggles with that, and so they're looking for help to figure that out. And I think those are going to be some things that sort of levels that playing field over time, if there are companies that can help do that. And that's probably the two concepts that I see around success strategies for
Hmm.
these particular big shopping events, like a Black Friday or a Cyber Monday, or certainly this holiday season, is try to look at the marketing component of it, how you're going to get noticed,
Yeah.
and then and then look at the last mile or the positioning component of that to make sure that, if everything's equal, and you
Hmm.
can get your product delivered to a buyer, the same day or the next day without paying, three times the shipping charge, or a big
Hmm.
big cost, then that saves a ton of margin and allows you to compete with the some of these big guys with big budgets.
There you go. I love these tips because, especially because, like you said, for if you're a smaller company and you're trying to break out in that buzz during that time of the year, I think there's definitely going to be a really big challenge. So, very practical advice. It actually reminds me, like I've been watching some like Shark Tank reruns lately, and I don't remember which company it was, but like one of their big critiques was that they were in the West Coast, their shipping was on the East Coast, and their like customers were somewhere totally different, and it was so expensive. So I think, like you said, having kind of these smart strategy to optimize that maybe is a really good hook. And also what you said about kind of stretching this period more than just like one window. I'm curious what your thoughts were. I know in Prime Days is now, I saw there was like a really popular article which talked about how many brands are hopping on this as kind of like a second Black Friday-esque period.
Right,
Do you think
right.
there'll be more of these kind of like moments popping up throughout the year,
I
inspired by
suspect.
Amazon or other brands?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you see it in, Europe and Asia and some other places, and I think
Hmm.
you'll see more of that here. Whether they, it gets tied to some sort of a holiday, or if that gets,
Hmm.
becomes a, you know, if they do it right. The reasons the Prime Days are successful, I mean, they've got a
Hmm.
lot of horsepower, so they can kind of create this market,
Hmm.
by focusing all this energy into one day. The trick for the smaller or the medium sized companies that are trying to, there's going to have to figure out. So, the Shopify's
Hmm.
may have to have their days, or the eBay's
Yeah,
will have
shop days.
all these different platforms are going to have their days, and that
Hmm.
should be, I think that'll be, powerful and valuable to really help even that out a little bit, because it shouldn't be all just, one or two
Hmm.
companies get to do that and nobody else gets to do it. So there's no reason why
I'm
Christmas can't come for everybody.
there we go. I think there's plenty of joy to spread around and plenty of
Right,
eager
right,
shoppers.
right.
So maybe thinking about these busy periods, what do you see as like the biggest areas for potential liability? I know that's something maybe brands have to kind of think about as well with everything they've got going on.
Yeah, so on the back end, on the logistics side,
Hmm.
it's not as complicated probably for the part that we do,
Hmm.
the service that we provide clients. But on the front end, we do hear, a lot of conversations today around, the security side. I mean, if they have websites, I mean,
Mm.
I think there's a pretty, the consumer, the antennas are up on the consumer right now. They're worried about, their personal data, not, their credit card
Mm.
information, the security side of shopping online. As it gets more and more, mainstream, there's worry that their data is going to be, so I think those are some of the liability things that I hear about. There's different things on their, uh, inventory levels that can create
Hmm.
liability. So, you know, let's say you have something that's really popular and
Hmm.
you brought in, 10,000 of them, and you turned on your marketing and your website and you sold 20,000 of them. So that, now what do you do? How does that work?
Yeah.
And that creates, because you don't know, right? You don't know what when somebody starts clicking those buttons, that could be
Hmm.
really rewarding or it could be really worrying, depending on how many clicks. And so that creates a liability situation with that. So how do you make sure that you have enough real-time information and you have your inventories
Hmm.
locked down and you know exactly where you are? And because if there's a disconnect there, if you've got somebody selling something and somehow the data
Hmm.
isn't connected to what you really have to sell, that can create some. So those are probably the two things that I see the
Hmm.
most. I mean, it's around inventories, not being synced up. We help with a lot of real-time information. Our platform is really super, I guess, aware of how that works with these online,
Mm-hmm.
these platforms, these marketplaces. And so, if there's a disconnect there or a timing problem there, I think that somebody can get in trouble pretty quick around that. And then again, on the security side, I just making sure they have a really secure, the data, the personal information, all that stuff is protected, and companies are getting better at that all the time. So every day it seems
Mm-hmm.
like some companies getting hacked, and they're
Yeah.
just almost every day you hear something.
Absolutely. And I think actually your tip ties in nicely with the previous conversation I had with another guest who talked about kind of on the conversion optimization side of it. They tested a lot in their store, like with some like CTA buttons, adding different kind of things by the checkout to just like encourage customers to feel like their data was protected or was like a secure checkout. A lot of tests like this were really successful. But of course, in order to have that information, you have to back it up with that actually being true. So, like you said, this is definitely something to focus on.
Right.
That way, people feel secure. Because if I have the choice between two brands that sell the same thing and one had this big data leak and the other didn't, I think it becomes quite clear who I'm going to go with.
Yeah, it's that's going to be a bigger deal in the future, I think. And
Mhm.
and the I guess the bad side of the world out there that's constantly trying to cause problems is they're they're getting smarter too, and so it's just going to be
Yeah,
this constant, I
kind
think,
of.
a constant battle for sure.
Absolutely. So I always like to kind of wrap up the podcast with a couple questions that I think just to really, first of all, dive into. I know supply chain is a big part of what you do. So maybe just to finish it off, how does a company supply chain relate to their Black Friday success, in your opinion?
Well, I think it, kind of goes back to that strategy, right? So
Yeah.
you have to have a strategy, to make sure that you have, you that it sounds super easy at a high
Yeah.
level, but the right stuff in the right place at the right time. And whether you have a strategy of a single inventory, whether you have a strategy for multiple, whether your
Hmm.
strategy is around, 3 or 4 day delivery, 1 or 2 day same day delivery. So you have to
Hmm.
put all of that into a plan, and then think about how that inventory flow is going to work through that strategy. So,
Hmm.
and it really becomes alignment. So you want to make sure whatever that strategy is that you're going to go to with your consumer, your product, make sure that your supply chain behind that aligns. So, our little tagline is, custom solutions, and so that's what we spend a lot of time making sure the strategy
Hmm.
for what you're trying to, the expectation at the consumer level mirrors is aligned with your supply chain expectations. And so that's where we spend a lot of time. And if you can get the data aligned and the physical network aligned and the marketing strategy aligned, usually those companies do really well. I mean, that's sort of Christmas every day kind of a scenario for a customer. So that would be my recommendation.
Absolutely. Thanks. I think that's a great tip. And like you said, like the customer side expectation really has to align with what it is that you're able to offer.
Right.
So maybe to finish it off, I always like to hear from guests, what do you think is the biggest mistake that brands make when it comes to their like customer journey, and their kind of brand success? It could be on Black Friday or it could be year round, whatever angle you prefer.
I would tell you that, it I think they underestimate what
Mm,
the requirement is on the supply chain side. I think, so back to my comment about it wasn't, no one really thought about it. It just showed up.
yeah.
When I need it, I go to the store, I get it, or when I need to order it, it shows up. And I
Hmm.
and I don't think there was a full appreciation of how much work. So we always say it's a really easy thing to draw on a whiteboard, but it's a really hard thing to make happen in real life. And
Hmm.
so you think, well, to buy it from here, or I'm going to get it manufactured somewhere, and I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to sell it, and everyone, so it sounds super simple, but there is a lot of complexity that goes into that. And I think the biggest thing that I see companies do is um, they underestimate the supply chain. um, they miss some of those things that could cause problems along
Mm,
the way, or they underestimate the magnitude of what those could, the delays, it
yeah,
could be that they can't even get something through customs. They don't think about, that gets flagged and they don't have something labeled right, and customs sits on it for a month and they miss Christmas. I mean, you just never,
yeah.
there's just a lot of things that can cause. So I would say the number one thing that I hear, kind of the horror stories for
Hmm.
companies are, is the planning around making sure that they've given themselves enough time and they've thought through, or they've got some partners that have helped them think through all of those situations that might um, catch them that they hadn't thought of. And again, you know when I first started in this business, I mean, you couldn't even get a supply chain degree. So I mean, they haven't. It's not
Yeah.
like we all woke up and we were supply chain experts every day. So
Well, thank you so much for all the great tips you had today, Carl. I think there's a lot of great kind of golden nuggets that people can pull from this episode. But in case they want to follow you or hear more of your advice, where is the best place that they can get some of these information if they're eager for more?
sure. So they can always contact us at Smart Warehousing, or
Hmm.
smartwarehousing.com, and we have a team of people here in our solutions department, and they're happy to
Hmm.
help them or answer any questions, or if there's anything that they need assistance with, we'd love to help.
All right. Well, I'll be sure to add that to our show notes. And thank you so much for joining me today, Carl. And that's it for this episode of Click to
All
Buy.
right. Very good. Thank you.